Welcome to YEW TREE Gallery and the exhibition Out of the Earth. The idea for this exhibition has been rumbling about in my mind for quite a while because I'm just so aware of how important the soil is to all life on Earth, of course. There is a lot of realisation nowadays that much soil, much earth around the world, and certainly in this country too, is becoming inert, and people are finding it really difficult to grow food without the additional use of more pesticides and so on and so forth, which make it more and more inert. And so I was really fascinated when I discovered the book by YEW Tree and subsequent film about the rewilding project at the Neck estate. A large number of acres there which had been arable and was getting terribly expensive to run because of all the input they needed to put in the soil, and to find how it's totally possible to recreate the life within the soil through more wilding and less intensive use of it. And so I thought, right, that's really a rather good subject to introduce through the work of several different artists working very much in connection with the earth. And as we walk around, you will see different examples of the work of the painters, potters, wood carvers, workers in metal, and so on. And I hope you'll enjoy it all. The paintings in this room, all around this gallery room, are devoted to Fiona Millais, who's a very well-established painter, and she evokes tremendous atmosphere in a lot of her work, particularly her woodland scenes, sort of misty early mornings and so on.
Out of the Earth was a great title for me because I love landscape and my work is mostly based on landscape, and particularly the British landscape. And I'm out every day in it. The inspiration of being outside and then coming back into the studio and trying to capture a day or a place, it's what I do, it's what I love doing. I like to find a new pathway, both metaphorically and in fact, and so I walk a lot and I find new little paths that I then try to put through into my paintings, and you'll find quite a lot of my paintings have a pathway that leads you through. I like that journey that it takes you through into a painting. It might be a pathway that you don't see the end of, so you think, well, what's around the next corner? And that for me is what painting is about as well. It's taking you through and finding another question that needs answering. I start a painting not knowing quite where it's going to take me. I might have an idea. It only becomes real after I've been actually working on it for a while, and sometimes it means I have to turn the painting the other way up and start again, or eventually the painting tells me what it wants to be. But that can involve quite a few layers and scraping back the paint and putting another layer on, building up a sort of history within the painting that can sometimes reflect the history of the landscape that I'm trying to paint. Certainly on the heathland near where I live, there are traces of where the local villagers used to grow potatoes during the war, and it leaves ridges and marks which are quite fun to then work into the painting as well, as a reflection on people who were there before now, even if it's just a rough heathland, but you can sort of see traces, which is a lovely thing to try and bring into the painting in a quite an abstract way.
And then here we have Sophie MacCarthy, whose exquisitely thrown pots, beautifully finely thrown, are decorated with flying, falling leaves, stalks, just beautiful colours. She grew up in the country, so she's very, very familiar with all things rural, but for many years she's lived in London now, as well as sort of autumnal imagery within country walks, etc. She finds fascination in puddles on tarmac that have leaves and all sorts of detritus in them, that are flattened by tyres and have little oil slicks in them, etc. And she sees pattern and imagery in those, which she also translates and into her her work. Several of her forms are quite unusual. There's the oil jar, which has a very Mediterranean feel to it, and large fish platters and tall jugs. I say her forms are exquisite in their own right, but I was very drawn to her work, and I thought the imagery in it was just perfect for this exhibition as well. Over here we have the work of Nicola Henshaw. She lives and works in the New Forest, and that's where she sources the oak and lime for her carved furniture and sculpture. In the corner over here you'll see a most unusual and beautiful chair made out of oak. The whole thing all just chiselled out of wood. Very amusing and also very practical. Mostly she's really well known for her idiosyncratic birds, seabirds, her shorebirds and her owls. This is one of the owls, and it has a hinged wing in which is a little beetle. So hidden under the wings of all her various birds are little treasures, sometimes the eggs of small birds. She loves legends and folk tales and fables and so on, and also she's quite influenced by those tapestries where creatures and birds were sort of larger than life, or features of them are larger than life. So sometimes her birds have huge feet and so on. So it's really quite a stylized interpretation, very, very individual, very beautifully carved. The work in this cabinet is devoted to the clay sculpture of Shirley Vel, an artist from Yorkshire, from the Yorkshire coast, actually, the North Yorkshire coast. She wanders along the coastline and also through fields and gardens, picking up little objects which she can incorporate into the designs that she makes, which represent sort of elements within, well, just above the earth, really, I suppose, but elements that have come from the earth. Very, very imaginative work, but quite evocative of sort of ancient times, a quite primitive feeling about them. Erosion marks on rocks and cliffs give her sort of inspiration to imitate that with etching lines and strokes of colour, because obviously rocks, or however, whether they might appear all greyish or all blackish or all brownish, they actually are full of lots of other subtle colours as well, and she's captured that really well in some of these pieces here. In this room I wanted to concentrate a bit more with things growing out of the earth and also beneath the earth. I was really thrilled to find in a copy of Resurgence magazine, which we sell here in the gallery actually, a whole page of paintings by Emma Chambers, who nestles down among the undergrowth and paints what she sees really close up.
So there's a story behind how this way of working began, which was I was going to paint some thistles in a field, actually, it was in Cornwall, and I'd set out to paint them with all my stuff, and heavens opened and it was an absolute downpour. So I needed somewhere to shelter, and I'd seen it's a well-trodden walk that I know, and all the sheep go behind this, they go, you know, under this crabapple tree and to shelter from the sun usually. So I knew this was going to be a good spot. So I went there and I sat under the crabapple tree with my back to an old Cornish wall. And in front of me was a bank of nettles, literally. I couldn't even see the sky. And I thought, well, this rain's not stopping, I'll paint the nettles. And it was such a sort of unbelievably magical moment of sitting completely sheltered and quiet and with just my subject so close to me. I could even see there's a little fly that was trying to shelter as well, but its wings got wet and it was like this. And I didn't really notice the fly till later on, but it was this discovery of being so close to the plants. And the more I painted, the more I saw, and I thought, yeah, this feels right. I really am loving this. It feels so connected, and I sort of, I don't know, I went into another world where I thought, oh, my plants are my friends, and I've still got the painting. I won't sell it. It was a sort of pivotal time in my sort of art journey. So that's where it began, and now I just love doing it. You can walk along and you can see, oh, well, I like that. But then when you sit on the ground, you're seeing a whole nother world that other people aren't really noticing, and I feel I'm sort of exploring and discovering. The kind of oil paint I use is actually a water mixable oil. So you can mix the oil paint with water. So in many ways it's like working with watercolour, which is kind of I see myself as a watercolourist, and I work with water, and of course plants are water, and traditionally lots of plants were painted with watercolour, because it gives the light of whatever you're working with, the gesso board or the paper or the linen, shines through, and that's where you get your light. You don't add white, which makes it opaque. You use the ground to give you this sense of light and translucency. I wanted to present a way of working which wasn't with paper, which was with a canvas or with a board, and make it slightly more modern as well. You have to use it quite delicately, because what you don't have with the gesso, unlike paper's very absorbent, so the water gets absorbed into the paper. With the gesso, it sits on the top and then does its own thing. But what the oil gives it is a lovely sheen that the watercolour often doesn't have. So you sort of have the best of both worlds. You have the wateriness and the sort of fluidity and transparency with a sort of a glow, I think, that your oil gives it.
And then beneath the surface of the earth, and especially along this tin coast where we live in Cornwall, the veins of tin and copper, which bring forth the work of REBECCA WALKETT, who makes these beautiful copper bowls with verdigris patination and other patinas as well.
It has been part of my sort of creative lexicon since I was at Middlesex Poly back in the 80s, because a book was published then called let me see if I can get this right, the Bronzing, Colouring and Patination of Metals. And it was like a Bible. It was like a really thick thing with all these beautiful illustrations of coloured copper, and the patinas were written out like little recipes, so like 100 grams of this and 2 ounces of that and something. And I got that, and so I immediately fell in love with the idea of introducing colour into the metalwork. Copper is the best metal for that. It reacts so well with all the different patinas, and you get all these amazing colours. I mean, there's a lot of blue-greens that you obviously get with copper, but there are other things, like there are browns, there are oranges, there are reds, but although they're difficult to get them to keep. I don't feel like I've even started yet in terms of getting the colours that I want to get. The main work is hammering over a steel former, which is called a stake, and you get lots of different shapes of them. So you use the whatever shape stake for the profile of the bowl that you're after. So you need to have quite a few. If you want to have a variety of shapes, you need to have quite a few stakes. Having moved down to Cornwall and being part of that whole mining industry and history, for me it makes the use of copper and the use of pewter, which is essentially tin, feels more natural. I've been looking at rocks, and I've been looking at stone circles and formations in the land and pathways and things like that. So, and I was trying to sort of consider how that could be involved in my work. The things that have really helped it was I went on a residency with the Maze Creative in November last year, and that was down at Cott Valley, and I spent a lot of time doing lots of drawings and photographs, and which have then, it's taken a year for them to develop, but they've sort of started to come out into the work. So within pieces like these two here, which is, I suppose, almost literal kind of representation of the rocks down on Porth Nan Vin, which is at the bottom of the Cott Valley. And then and these pieces here, so the lines in the bowl have come from looking at the big slabs of rock that are down in Cape Cornwall, where they've got all those great big fishes and lines of coral.
In the middle of Emma's wall is an exquisite, delicate construction made from Galloway willow, and these are by Lizzy Faeery, who lives up in Galloway. She is a willow sculptor of some renown. This piece behind me is called Nest. All the tiny twigs that form this beautiful pattern, the symmetrical patterns that you find repeated over and over again in nature, they're actually held together by tiny little twists of wire. It's perfectly stable, it's a complete piece, and make a wonderful wall decoration too. On the granite wall, which was mined out of our field as it happened, or quarried rather, there are two other pieces, one called Sedge and the other one Seed Heads, all created from willow, and some of them have got some bog myrtle in as well, and just put together so cleverly and delicately that they flow in the natural manner of the plants growing. On this wooden table, on our slate floor, incidentally all made from old roof slates, there is a collection of boxes by Ardin Griffin. These are most exquisitely painted with, this one is called Spring Flowers, all round in a sort of narrative really, so that you're walking, feels as though you're walking round a garden. Ardin is herself a passionate gardener. She's also been a fine artist for many, many years, having studied at Goldsmiths College in University of London. She paints both large canvases and just rather loves decorating boxes as well, because of the narrative appeal. Subjects can vary a lot, but flowers do tend to be one of her favourite because she's so knowledgeable about them and loves them. These are absolute little gems. On the glass shelves and in the window behind me here are Reese Ingram's clay sculptures of animals and birds. Reese is a sculptor of, again, some renown, and one of the gardens we have two large stone carvings by him too. And round the corner here on this windowsill are the slipware ceramics of Nigel Lambert. He's from the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, and his work is very painterly, but also very, very usable and lovely to have as, you know, decoratively on the table, being used for food. Food looks really great in the pieces, especially these pasta dishes. They're all uniquely decorated, so no two are exactly alike, but they mix and match perfectly. Behind me on these white shelves are the slab-built ceramics of Diolfantio Catto. She first of all studied fine art painting at Chelsea College of Art, hence the beautiful decoration on her pots, often birds, tiny little creatures, and other interesting imagery. She actually learnt the craft of hand-built pottery through masters in Japan, and often has exhibitions over in Tokyo and Kyoto, where her work is greatly sought after, as it is indeed in this country. In the sculpture gardens, we have three now, certainly expanding. There's the pond garden and the walled garden, which I've always called the secret garden, and the larger lawn sort of facing the gallery. But we have in each of those Helen Nock's sculpture.
Primarily, and how I started was making things out of reclaimed slate. So about 20 years ago, I thought I was going to continue painting, but I had a studio at an old quarry, and I was working for a blacksmith at the time, so that was just kind of something to do while I was finding my way with my own practice. Prior to that I was teaching, And so he desperately needed some help, and he also trained me on the forge. Out of that came a collaboration where he made the metal bases from my designs and I made the surfaces. So it all started one day, one lunch break, and I was scavenging around the forge and I found a load of old terracotta tiles in the earth, and it was just one of the forge's old buildings. And I made a table from that, and it progressed from there. And I thought, well, you know, it makes perfect sense, and I really enjoyed it. It was physical, and so then I went on to purposely collect reclaimed materials that I enjoyed, that spoke to me, and then I started with slate, and then I continued to find, whether it be in the dirt, in the quarry, along the shoreline, and really getting inspired by the places where I found the materials as well. So whilst the finding was going on, so then there's all these kind of influences that you can't quite articulate are coming in, with the atmosphere and the impression and the places I love to be, and that's quite often influenced some of the designs in the work as well. The starting point is being materials led. So this piece, for example, this lovely piece of ceramic was made by a colleague of mine, and it was a huge platter that broke. And then I just saw it in a new form and then added pieces to it that I've thought work with it. And then, you know, catching the light. I did start to work a lot with glass because I'm fascinated about, the way it catches the light. It just gives it that little extra something. But by and large, my work is very organic. And very earthy and very elemental.
Our pièce de résistance in the pond is this wonderful sculpture of trout swimming through reeds. It's made by Nicola Henshaw. You remember she made those beautiful carved chairs. This piece is just intended to be just sunk within a pond so that you see the reflections of it as well on the surface of the water. And it is a combination of oak and steel. And over in the bog garden there are aluminium and steel iridescent fish swimming through the plants there by Mike Savage. He's from Rye in Sussex, and they just look so lifelike, and they make a really excellent decoration within any garden. We are selling in the exhibition the illustrated book Wilding by YEW Tree, which I talked about at the beginning, and the illustrator is Angela Harding, whose work we do show here. These are some of her stunning, that's a liner cut, stunning illustration there, and there are many colour ones as well. It just really brings to life what YEW Tree and her husband Charlie are doing at NEP. In revitalising the soil and the land and encouraging that wonderful synchronicity of animals and plants and trees and insect life, etc., all creating a richness of nature. So do visit it if you ever have a chance. They have wonderful glamping and camping grounds there too. And finally, the charity we're supporting this time is the Soil Association. They do really remarkable work in research into the soils, the nature of pesticides and what they do to fruit, vegetables and things that we eat. They have many schemes for working with farmers to encourage sustainability, really well worth supporting. So through commission on sales in this exhibition, that's where the funds will be going this time. Well, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the exhibition and look forward to seeing you.